So in this next example, what we're going to do is look at further refactoring our code and creating a new class. The scenario is that we want to be able to add additional content to our page, but we want to use the tool that's inside of the build method of the page object. If we scroll up to that, this method here takes a group of settings and generates some output for it. But this can be really useful for components of a page and not just the full page itself. So say we wanted to use this to build out a sidebar or a footer or something like that. That would be really nice, but it doesn't really make sense in the context of a page class to do that because we're not dealing with a page, we're dealing with a part of a page. So this is another area where we can refactor this into a separate class that's useful in multiple contexts. So let's go ahead and do that with this next step. I'm going to jump back to the file browser and I'll open up the fifth step, which is called adding a conditional class. Go ahead and copy all of this code and paste it over the code that's currently in the index.php file. So we've added a couple new things in this file. I'm going to scroll up a bit. We've added this new class called builder. Again, just like our validator class, this is sort of an invention, a machine that we're building, rather than something as concrete as a page or a form. Now, as we move through these videos and as you learn more about object-oriented programming, you're going to hear the words abstract and concrete appear in some different contexts. They mean something very specific when it comes to object-oriented programming, but also when we talk about the concepts around these different classes, some of them are a bit more abstract in the sense that they wrap around ideas more than they do embody an actual object. So I just wanted to make it clear that we're going to be talking about abstract in a couple of different ways here. For now, we're just talking about it in the informal sense. The builder class is kind of an abstract idea. So the code should look kind of familiar to you. It goes through a bunch of settings, loops through them, and builds some output. Finally, it returns that output. Something unique about this class that we haven't seen so far is that it doesn't have any static methods, but it also doesn't have a constructor. Now we could have built this out to use a static method, but my thought in not making this static is that I can imagine scenarios where we're going to want to do some other things to the properties inside of this builder. For example, we might want to take these settings and run them through some kind of process before we send them to render. And if this was a static function, then we couldn't use properties of an instance because it needs to work without an instance. So this was just an architectural choice, and it doesn't add any overhead for now. In a sense, I'm anticipating things that I don't need yet, and if I had had to build additional code in order to meet those imaginary requirements, then that's probably a sign that I'm on the wrong track. But for now, it's a toss-up, so I went ahead with a non-static function. So now this is the code that we're going to use instead of our build method inside of our page class. So let's take a look at how that's being implemented. So I'm going to scroll up to our page class here. And now we have our function build. So we're still keeping the build method, but instead of doing all of the logic in here, we instantiate a new builder object, and then we run that render method inside of the builder object and pass it the settings from this instance of the page class. And it sets that as the output, which again is used inside of the theme method here. Now the whole point in refactoring this code into its own class was so we could use it in a different context. So let's go ahead and see how that's being done. I'm going to scroll down here to where our arrays are. And we have a new array called footer content. So this is going to add a footer to our page. In fact, let's jump to the browser and take a look at this by refreshing the page. And you'll see that we now have a footer at the bottom of it that says copyright build a module. If we jump back to the editor, you'll see that we generate an array of data that we're going to pass to that builder. And then we generate the footer output by passing it to the render method of the builder variable. Now, this builder variable, we instantiated up here above all of the arrays. And that's so that we can use it over and over if we need to generate multiple pieces of content. Right now, we're just generating our footer, but as we start to build out our page, we'll add more and more that we might need that builder object for. I'm going to scroll down. And so we generate this footer here, and then in our page elements, we add that footer down to the bottom of that array. So now we have our header, our contact form, and our footer. Okay, in this next step, what we're going to do is take this code right here and wrap it in a class.